On this episode of The Standard, we're going to go through change of direction and how we actually get it to transfer to the field and to sport. You're going to see our progressions and our regressions that we think actually work to help increase performance in our sport. A lot of times we see these footwork drills or just an insane amount of box jumps and thinking that we're making everybody faster and change direction faster. We don't believe in those anymore. Today, you're going to see what we do. Change direction for the sports that we usually work with is like probably the most transferable thing that we do in here. And we have a lot of different movers, and we see a lot of different things like on social media and athletes and stuff doing like quick feet drills or all these other things, which might not necessarily hurt you, but we don't really see those transfer in the way that with the main sports that you work with, like basketball, volleyball, soccer, football. Change direction is huge, and your progressions on the change direction are awesome. And we see how those work with your athletes, especially that you've had for long periods of time. Kind of give me a framework on how you start and then what you're trying to progress them to.
Yeah, I think change of direction is a little bit of a tough one because every athlete's going to move much differently, and every sport's going to be a little bit different when it comes to change of direction. I think the big thing to start off with change of direction is making sure that the athlete actually has like the physical capabilities to get into the positions we're asking them. So a lot of the times that's some of the assessments I'll do to start. Do they have the strength and the actual abilities to load into the angles and stuff that we want them to be able to? From there, we kind of just challenge those positions. So I'll always kind of start off in static positions, just making sure they're able to get to the angles, get to the positions, load into the areas that we want them to be able to load into. Then we'll just kind of start progressing from there. So we'll basically start statically, start moving a little bit more dynamically. Anytime we're progressing change of directions, there's 3 ways that you can progress. So either entry speed, how fast we're going into the cut, or honestly the type of movement we're doing into the cut, whether it's a shuffle, a crossover, on a sprint. The angle of the cut, so making that angle a little bit more aggressive and deep going into that cut will be our next progression. And then obviously eventually working into like more sports specific, like reactivity and stuff with that cut, adding external factors, changing the environment, and stuff like that with that cut is how we'll progress through.
Now, my goal for today and like why we've been doing these podcasts is to see the practicality of it, because everybody talks about these drills, but how it actually works with the limited amount of time with some of these kids and the athletes have no off season. So like you were saying, you know, they have to have prerequisite strengths, range of motion, be able to get into them, but at the same time, they're already cutting in their sport, right? So I know you're trying to get better at those shapes, but how do you kind of blend of like, hey, I got to give them what they need right now, but still trying to build a foundation that's hopefully going to help build them in the long run?
Yeah, I think at some point in training, you have to be okay with things not being perfect. Ideally, that's where we do want to get. But at some point, it's like, hey, if you're going to go play your sport in a month, like we have to expose you to positions that we know you're at least safe to get into to go play your sport. So that's a little bit of a tricky one, a little bit of an art. But basically, we'll just kind of use a progression across a scale to work into those positions eventually. So whether we are going to progress a little bit further in a session than we would technically like to on the first day, Our goal over the course of a full training block or a full summer or whatever we have them for, we are going to continue to try to perfect the little pieces on that front end, the underpinning qualities and stuff that we want to see with change of direction, day to day, week to week, as we maybe expose them to a little bit more advanced cuts or advanced changes of direction, agility stuff earlier in a session than we would technically like to in a perfect world. But again, eventually you kind of have to expose them to what they're going to see in sport, and we have to see how they handle those to almost go back and work on those qualities that we think that they're missing on the front half.
Yeah, I think the art of it is, with our high school athletes, different than the college and our professional athletes, is our high school athletes, they don't have an off season. One, they're playing multiple sports, or two, it's club, or it's on to the next, or it's practice, or it's open gyms, or whatever, sevens, whatever it is. They never have really a down season. So it's like, if we spend a lot of time on change direction or acceleration or top speed, but then they already had practice that day, or they have a game the next day, or things like that, to where we almost have to microdose them in and get those little shapes where you'll hear some people say, drills aren't making us faster. But I mean, I feel like you agree with me, but if we can get them in the right shapes in here, and we can slowly start making that more of a chaotic environment, starting it to where it's, foundational, but then they can start doing them in chaotic environment with the right amount of volume, we can get them to transfer, to their sport. When you get a team that's in season and change the direction, where is that on your hierarchy? Say it's a high school team, not one of your elite teams, maybe it's a high school team to where you have to keep that in there, but you also have other KPIs that you're working on. Where's change direction fall in that? And how much would you hit change direction, like in an off season, in a preseason, during season? Because I know those volumes and that density changes.
Yeah, so going back to that first point, I think a little bit of, obviously, like in a perfect world, I would love to give a full off season to every, especially developmental athlete, to have time to actually work on some of these underpinning qualities and development and stuff like that, and give their bodies a little bit of break from their sport. But part of the beauty of them playing sports so much is they're actually getting a lot of the exposure of the cuts and change of directions that we want them to get in training. So that almost starts kind of checking some of the boxes of like the volumes and intensities we want to hit, which almost allows us in training to reel back and work on some more of like the technicalities and the underpinning qualities. So I would say, as far as like a KPI and a hierarchy, change of direction is going to sit pretty high for a lot of my sports, especially when we look at just like the game of soccer, the game of basketball, how many cuts and like changes of direction, decelerations they're going to have in every single game. I think the more efficient and strong they are in those positions, the more likely they are to actually, our goal is to affect performance in the end game. So if that's giving us a chance to actually affect performance on the court, on the field, I think obviously it's going to sit fairly high on that hierarchy. Another kind of part of the beauty of it is we will work things that will affect our change of direction ability that also are going to transfer and help out with other things. I mean, when we're working eccentric strength, or some of our reactive plyos, or eccentrics and the reflexive eccentrics and all those things, that technically should underpin and help out with our change of direction ability, those are also going to help with our general strength and with our movement capabilities and our ranges of motion and stuff like that. So we are kind of hitting multiple boxes with one, but I would say, as far as like ranking the change of direction ability and like technicalities on a hierarchy, they're going to sit pretty high for a lot of athletes.
I think that's where I can win in here, where I'm thinking about the transfer of, are these drills actually making us better? I feel like working on a cut, working on getting right in those right positions, I'm going to strengthen the ankle, knee, and hip better than anything else. And getting that compliance of those three working together, I can do that at a faster rate of motion and a more applicable shape than anything I can do in the weight room, right? Doesn't mean that we transfer and put both together, or we don't do that. But I feel like in those movements, you're seeing them load that hip, that knee, and that ankle. Like, we're building so much more capacity just by doing those, even if they're not in a chaotic environment to where maybe they have to react and the knee's in this position and the foot's in this position, because we know what they're going to get in those in the sport. But even just loading the hip, knee, and ankle, I feel like is where I can get my most wins in here, to where even like in my own head sometimes, because it's like we're shuffling into something. It's like, do we ever make that 90-degree cut? Do we ever do that? But loading the feet and the hips and the knee and the ankle, one, I feel like it lets the brain know that, hey, we can get in those positions. But two, I think it really strengthens us. You know what I mean? Going from those movements into like the plyometrics, same thing, to where we see these all the time, and we see people jump on a high box or over these hurdles, but I feel like some of the biggest issues is like the shapes are wrong, or they're doing basketball workouts at 6 a.m. every single day while having basketball, while having weights, and they do maybe 500 contacts because of their jumps and these jump ropes and speed ladders, but they're in bad positions. How can you integrate those together, and how do you do that with your athletes? Or like if you're an athlete and you're playing in season or you're playing in club and you're like, man, my knees hurt, but I'm trying to get better at hoops, and I got a guy that can teach me how to play basketball, but we're just doing box jumps all morning, and then I want to go lift weights, and then I want to go practice and play for my club, and then body always hurts. How do you talk to an athlete like that? And if you're an athlete, if you're listening to this, what would you focus on?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Being able to load into those positions efficiently and correctly are going to help with a lot of those issues like the knee pain, the ankle pains, and stuff like that. I think a lot of people use like the weight room and strengthening exercises to try to work into those range of motions and stuff as well. But at some point we have to look at like force and velocity as well.
It's not the same intensity.
Exactly. And so you're building into those in a lot faster velocities, a lot more sports specificity. And now we're starting to train like different angles and positions that you really can't hit in the weight room. So the way the foot turns and adducts, inversion, eversion, supination, all those things. The way the foot and the ankle, the shin rotation and all that stuff happens during like a change of direction. Yeah, you may not hit like a normal just 5-yard shuffle and stuff like that in sport very often. Typically, if we are in a shuffle position, it's usually like a 1 to 2 step and get out of it. However, like you're training the capacity and the capability of that position. To be able to load and get in and out of that. And then eventually you are building the capacity and strength with that. As far as the plyometrics go, that's tricky, and that's going to be quite a bit sport to sport as well.
And that's what we'll get into today.
Yeah, basically what we'll look at right off the bat. I'm just going to use like basketball and volleyball as an example because those are the big ones that I usually deal with that have like more so the issues with the knees and stuff like that as far as volume of plyometrics. When you look at like, especially like basketball, you got to look at like the type of plyometrics that they're getting on the court. They're hitting a ton of kind of that like medium level plyometrics where, to be honest, that's where I see a lot of like coaches go to in the weight room and stuff as well. Like with our box jumps and stuff like that, technically not like a true plyometric, but if you were to rank it somewhere more of that kind of medium tier, that's where we try to play with volumes. It's like, okay, we can get away with doing a high volume of extensive plyometrics. So our low level pogos and stuff like that. One, we're really working on the elastic capabilities and like the strength and positions of like the foot and the ankle, which is really important in our change of direction and jumping. Two, we're getting a lot of contacts and building up that capacity again of those tendons and everything as we're going through those like extensive plyometrics without causing a lot of like damage that's going to cause those like patella tendonitis, Achilles tendonitis issues and stuff like that. From there, we try to microdose in our high level plyometrics. So your drop jumps, your bounds, your like more aggressive short contact, early explosive plyometrics like that. Realistically, like if you can get those in once every probably 10 days, you're probably checking the box, especially in season. Off season, we may implement those in a little bit more. Those are just the ones you kind of have to be careful with when you're looking at the volume of like play and practice versus the weight room. Again, our goal is always to positively increase performance. Again, if we are just doing that because we think it's the right thing to do to increase their performance and jump height and all this stuff, but we're not looking at the external factors because that's not our world. It's still our responsibility. Our only goal as performance coaches is to increase performance on the court or on the field. So if I'm doing something because it's my lane and that's what I want to do and I think that's going to help, but I'm not looking at those external factors and all of a sudden I'm causing more issues in the knee and stuff than I'm causing good, then I'm not doing my job in the long run. So that's where you just have to be really careful and close to those volumes and intensities and make sure that you're doing the right things to affect performance in the right ways.
I love it. And I think that takes us to where now we're going to go into the practical side of things, which is why we're trying to do this off the field movement series that we've been doing through these podcasts. I want to show, everybody talks about them. I kind of want to show how we go through a session with an actual athlete, how we start, how we work through some plyos and really what it looks like, how we cue and how we take them through it. So let's go rip that.
Let's do it.
So our goal here is to kind of show what a session might look like. Again, we're obviously going to speed it up for this video, but we have our athlete and our new coach, Max, who we're going to take through. Everybody talks about extensive pogos or extensive plyos, even like he was talking about the medium level stuff. We're going to kind of show you like, okay, how we move, how to make sure that we can get in those shapes, especially in season where it's like you can watch them in the warm up to where it's like a movement screen where if you see them kind of when they get done and they do one of these, that's a good opportunity to kind of see how they're feeling, to see if you got to make an adjustment, if there's a plan B that we have to do. And then we're going to go through some of our anchor movements that we do to make sure that, again, Max can get in those positions, kind of warms the hip, knee, and ankle up. And then we're just going to gradually build the intensity like we would in a session. So, Wyatt, let's just go through it. You're going to coach him. I want you to go through like your extensive plyo series, kind of like what you always focus on, and then we'll roll through there.
Awesome. So we're going to start off just basic pogo jumps. Basically the goal here, we're going to look for like foot contacts, compliance, but also like a level of like stiffness and rhythm.
Give me a little bit of compliance. So that's a word that's been getting thrown around a lot lately, but I still don't feel like people know what it means.
Yeah.
But talk to me about compliance.
Yeah. So when we're looking for compliance, we're looking for equal movement and bend through the hip, knee, and ankle. So anytime we're going through like a jump or especially like a decel or a cut or a change of direction, we want like our whole lower body to be able to dissipate the force equally. So I don't want like a really common one we'll see in a cut is people getting really, really like hip dominant over like the knee. So the hip is doing all the work and the knee is staying really stiff, which puts us in bad positions and more likely to like injury or for like an inefficient bad cut. So basically what we're looking for in a lot of this stuff when we're going to talk about compliance is just like equal bend through the hip, knee, and ankle, all those working together.
Seems like it's common sense, but like you said, the injuries that we can get out of it, like if you're having patella issues, you'll see somebody cut or they'll jump and they won't load the hip and the knee over the foot. Okay. And if we do that, again, that's where it's like, okay, the ACL, even worse on the patella tendonitis, that's where the ankle goes from here. And then even if we're not getting hurt, really decreases performance. So some of these movements help us warm up and get in those positions. That's why we do these every single day. Sorry, Wyatt, keep rolling.
Good. So the first one, we're going to go just a basic forward pogo. So the big things we're going to look for this is almost that compliance angle. So just hip, knee, and ankle sitting together and working together. We want to stay relatively high here. Stacked posture up top. So always controlling the upper half when we're talking about change of direction cutting, or really most of the movements that we're going to do in the weight room or performance setting. And then the big one we're going to look for right now is just foot control, ankle control. So I just want to see roll through the foot. So every time I'm going through the pogo, I'm looking for that little bit of drop and push off the ground. And I'm looking for heel through the toe, rolling off the foot as we go through our pogos. So right now, Max, we're just going to have you go 5 yards forward, double leg on that pogo, tall stacked up top, rolling through that foot. Nice and easy on every rep here.
And if you watch his first couple reps, he was landing a little bit toey, and then he started getting good at it. That's super common. Even at the end, he was killing that. But we get a lot of athletes that land on their toes. We don't want that. We want that ankle to be strong and have big range. So if we see an athlete doing that, it's like we have to stop it right away. Because if we don't, it's months down the road that we have to start fixing it. Good job, Max.
So now what we'll do is we'll start challenging directions and positions with these as well. So now we're just going to go backwards. A lot of the times as we kind of change the direction here, someone's really comfortable and looks good in one direction. Then all of a sudden we'll start seeing issues in the other direction. As we're going backwards, we're not going to see roll through the foot anymore. One of my big cues for this one is we're almost pretending like we're trying to pull our toes off the ground. So that ball of the foot and heel are going to kind of stamp the ground at the same time. But I'm looking for that exact same thing. Tall and stacked up top through that rib, hip, and shoulder. Full foot landing into the ground and that same little bend and push off the floor with every rep. We should feel really under control on these ones, like every rep's the same. I could stop on any rep, not like I'm scooting or falling backwards.
So what we're looking for here, hip, knee, and ankle working together, but then also control with the posture. You get a lot of young athletes or somebody maybe that's injured. It's like when they hit, they can't control their posture together. So when they hit the ground, they either go here or we can see a hip drop or a hike. But a lot of times if they can't get into that, we know when they get in their cut, they're going to have a bad posture, which again, is where we can have an injury here, or it's just going to make us slow off the ground. It's going to be a bad cut. So this is a good time to us where we can cue a lot. So then when we start getting into those faster, more intense, chaotic positions, we don't have to cue as much if we nail the posture and the foot position during these drills.
Typically with these ones, now we'd work into more of a lateral position and a single leg position. Just because I have worked with and used Max before for sake of time, we'll skip those ones, but looking for a lot of the same things, especially as we go single leg. That's where you really start exposing what that foot and ankle are doing upon contact, what that hip and upper body are kind of doing upon contact as well. Another common one that I really like to use on my change of direction days is a 2 forward, 1 back. Now we're getting a little bit of rhythm. We're getting a little bit more of that load and kind of like that change of direction ability out of this one. So for this one, we're just going exactly what it says, 2 forward, 1 back, trying to feel that full foot get into the ground still. See kind of how that foot and ankle reacts as we're going through those positions. Can I maintain my upper body stack in position as I'm working different foot angles here? So Max will have you go same thing, 2 forward, 1 back, and we'll just work over the course of 5 yards right here.
And again, you see the low level here. This is where you can build some volume. This is where you can cue and teach. These don't need to be super aggressive. It doesn't need to be how far you can go forward, how far you can go back, how high you can go. Just thinking about that compliance and that light and bouncy off the ground. Max is killing that right there.
Awesome. This next one really starts to apply to kind of our change of direction positions. This is a nice one that I like athletes to feel before we even start cutting, because it kind of gets us on the edges of our feet and exposes that foot and ankle position and some of the shin angles and foot angles that we want to see during cutting. So Max, I'll have you face me on this one. We're going to go that same exact 2 forward, 1 back. Now we're just going to go lateral. So we're going to try to keep our feet right underneath our hips. Goal on this one is I'm still staying nice, tall, and stacked through that hip, rib, and shoulder. I'm just going to feel my feet kind of move outside that plane of my hips. So we'll go 2 sideways and then popping 1 back the other way. And what we'll see on this one is more exposure to kind of the edges of the feet and shin angles that we'll actually see as we go to cut and change directions today. Good. Get those feet outside the hips. Try to feel kind of edge of the feet as we're making that cut. Yeah, a little bit of rhythm on these ones too.
Sorry, I thought we had an athlete today.
Now we start exposing some rhythm and coordination and stuff as well, which is always important in athletics.
There you go. Cool thing about all this is everything that he's doing right now. And again, in the video, it's taking a long time, but we can do this in these low levels in 3 minutes. Like, it doesn't take a long time. You can do these in the weight room on days that you can't run, or they had practice that they just came to you, or you're about to have practice. So you're just trying to be able to mix some things in to where we can make sure that we keep the compliance and keep them healthy. These are some awesome things that we can do in training.
Probably the last one on the plyometrics side of things. This one's another like low level plyometrics we'll do. This one will be a deep tier plyo. This one I really like to look at as far as, can I control my posture through a deeper angle and deeper range of motion through the knee, hip, and ankle? And then 2, like, how comfortable are they actually loading into that front half? So a lot of the times, especially like if we get someone with like patella pain or like post knee injury or something, this is when we'll see some big differences side to side, and we'll see one of 2 things. Either they're just really uncomfortable getting into that low position and they just kind of refuse to get there, or we'll see like a ton of stiffness as they're coming off the ground here and not actually loading through the knee and the hip together. So again, on this one, we're going to look for compliance. I'm going to think about this like split stance position. I'm looking for like back knee, hip, rib, and shoulder to stay nice and stacked up tall, keeping that posture. Now I'm going to really look for compliance on that hip, knee, and ankle. So I'm going to see as I hit the ground, can I load into that and then push back out of that equally and smooth the entire time? Both feet leave the ground and hit the ground at the same time. Can I keep that upper body stack? And can I actually see some of that bend and compliance to the knee? Again, a lot of the times when we see like injured athletes, weak athletes, or athletes with like some pain in the knees, we'll see a lot of this like forward lean, bad posture. We'll see a lot of that shift side to side, or we'll see a really stiff contact where there's no compliance at all. So the next one we'll have you use just a split stance deep tier. Nope, we're just going to stay in place with this one. Good, chest up nice and tall, stack yourself.
Just the hips forward, just barely. There you go. Chest up just a little bit, hip forward, barely.
So you'll see Max is actually working through that knee, working through that hip, feeling a little bit of that compliance and pop off the ground.
You have some pain on the knees, you have pain on the back of the knee. This is a great one that you can do. Say you're coming off of a surgical procedure, you can do this in the pool. This is something once you get that range that you can start working your way in. Or we'll do a lot of times with like a band with our guys in season, okay, to where again, the knees are bugging, but it's like we can really start getting some blood flow in there. We can really start warming up those knees that make it easier to get to practice, that make it easier to get into those shapes. So if you need to at the beginning, you can use a band. You can even start at a higher position. So sometimes with my guys where I'm just going to work the best range that I can get to. And the goal would be to get all the way down. But if we can't, then we're just like, okay, what's plan B? We're going to see if we can still be in a split position and just work the best range we got with each day trying to push and progress that range of motion. So even if you have pain, you're like, I can't lunge, I can't do this. There's some stuff we got to get stronger with the hip, the knee, and the ankle, and the whole lower half. But you can build those ranges even as you're pushing intensity in season.
Yeah, all these lower level and deep tier plyos are awesome too, because one, they're going to show us a lot before we actually get into a session as far as like exposure of how the athlete's feeling. If we're seeing them really slow off the ground that day, it might be something pain-wise the issue, or we may need like a little bit of a lighter day. Maybe they're a little bit overtrained. We'll start seeing a lot of what's going on at the foot, ankle, knees, and hips. We'll start seeing some uneven landings or some shifts and stuff like that may be strength issues we need to work on, as well as like as we go through these ones, we are actually working on building capacity and building strength of those like tendons and some of the problem areas that we'll see in sport and change of direction.
I love it. Now let's get into some of the fun shit. So we're going to start getting into some cutting. Okay, before we go right to that, where do we start? What are we doing?
Yeah, so typically what we would do is kind of work in a static position. We like to use a lot of like band resisted variations just to get the athletes to kind of feel some of the pulling force that we'll see that's usually created with your entry speed. So like when I'm like shuffling or running into a cut. So basically we'll get them into some deceleration positions and like side shuffle, change of direction positions. So for example, right here, Max, I'm gonna have you face forward to start. So we're just gonna go into a banded turn and face. Yeah, face Taylor. So now we're gonna work into just a deceleration position. So I'm gonna start off just really static. Basically, Max is gonna work into what we would feel with a deceleration. So we're gonna get that full front foot into the ground. I'm gonna think kind of working through that hip, knee, ankle like we just worked on. I always cue shoulder right over the knee because we will have a little bit of forward lean to start in this one until we actually start working into a cut. But then we're just gonna see how they're able to kind of load into this position. So Max, you'll drop right here. And then basically Taylor will pull on the band a little bit. You can also do this with like a band connected to a rack. Now we're just starting to feel a little bit of that horizontal force. So without the band, as we actually go into our movements, you'll create that horizontal force with your entry speed. So running or shuffling or whatever you're doing into that cut. This just allows the athlete to start feeling some of that horizontal force before we actually start working into the cut.
I like him thinking about too on his front foot, like he's almost trying to push away from me, like keeping the knee forward, so keep it back where it was, but feeling like it's like you're pushing, so making that quad work as he goes to it. And then also, Max, as you step forward, I want you to step like you're decelling, so you're gonna go heel through your toe. Okay, so step forward and then yes. So if you watched Wyatt when he was coaching that, okay, he did that. But to get him in that position, even to get to that static position, I like to cue that because again, if we can do it in these slow movements, it's a lot easier as we start getting faster. Good job, Max.
And now you can start having him actually feel some of the cutting into that position. So if you actually stay in there, now Max is just going to start square feet facing him still. Taylor's going to give him some resistance on that band. So he's already having to kind of lean back into that cut. Now he's going to do like maybe a 2-step drop into it or just a 1-step drop into it where we actually do have to feel all of that load together. We're going to start referencing like penultimate and antepenultimate step, which is just the last 1 to 2 steps before we actually get into a transition cut, which is where we want to start feeling a lot of this. So what we're going to look for is he's doing this and drops into that, rolling through the foot. So heel into that full foot contact. And then we're seeing the center of mass drop. That's going to be one of the biggest things as we go into change of directions is, are they overly stiff going into that cut, or do they have problems kind of correctly lowering their center of mass with each step as we go into a cut?
Love it. Cool.
Awesome.
We can do this from a bunch of different positions.
Yeah, we'll work those in a lot of our like lateral shuffle positions, crossover positions as well, but that's kind of the main thing that we want to see on that. From here, basically we'll start actually working a little bit more dynamic movement. So we've checked the box on our static movements. We've kind of introduced some of those plyos. Now we'll start actually moving across the turf with it. First one I like to do is I like to introduce just an actual deceleration position. I like to go really, really slow to fast on these ones. So instead of working right into like, you know, a sprint decel or a jog decel, we'll start in our gallop position. So what we do is we just place the athlete in that deceleration position we just started with. We'll start up a little bit higher, but we'll just start in kind of that split stance we were just in. All we're going to look for this one, okay, I want to keep the kind of like hip and shoulder in the exact same position as we start. Really, we're we're going to start focusing on feeling that roll through the foot. So we'll take this one out through like 5 yards to start. I'm just pushing off the back foot, rolling through the front foot, trying to stay nice and smooth through 5 yards. Now what we're really going to start to cue and see on this one is their ability to get that compliance decel position through a little bit more dynamic movement. So we'll take this one through 5 yards. As I get to 5 yards, we're looking for exactly what we just cued on that band. Roll through the foot, sit through the hip, knee, and ankle together. So I'll have the athlete start up a little bit taller than our typical decel position. We'll feel that nice roll through our front foot. As I get to 5 yards, I'm trying to feel sit. Hip, knee, ankle work together. I'm still in this good quality position we've been talking about. One of the big things that we'll start seeing on this one through some more dynamic movement is athletes start to fold instead of sit, or start to get really toe heavy instead of full foot contact. As we build speed through any sort of cut, those are going to start exposing some big issues. So we'll just roll through the foot through 5 yards. As we get there, we're going to feel ourselves sit, roll through the foot. Great job. And then we'll kind of raise our level again. We'll take it out the next 5 yards. Smooth roll, full foot sit. Nice job. You even saw right there. Came into that cut a little bit fast, so we started getting too heavy on the toe. This is where we're going to really start feeling our ability to get the foot into a good position on our cut. Where's that anti-penultimate and penultimate step are going to come in. So we'll go one more time. As we're going, I don't want you to worry about being perfect at 5 yards. Good. So slow that gallop down a little bit. I don't want to see you like float and jump on that, right? I'm staying nice and low. I should almost have a foot in contact with the ground the whole time. And then I'm just trying to easily decel through that front leg on this last one.
Love that right there. That was gold right there. Nice.
Much better.
Cool thing about these too is you're coming off an injury. We can slowly start progressing our way. You can push the range. You can slowly start building in some change of direction. You're on a block where you can only really sprint 1 day a week. These can be your down days to where it's not super heavy on the lower half. We have somebody in season, or you're like, I'm still trying to stay fresh and healthy in season as I'm hooping, as I'm playing football, whatever it is. Even just a few low-level reps like this, just make sure that everything stays fluid. So when you are in your sport, it's an easy way to keep the quickness and how you felt at the beginning of the year. We can keep that all year long. I love that right there, Wyatt. Good job.
Do you actually want to go through like the full like jog, sprint, everything here?
I think maybe a couple of the quick progressions. Okay. So we're trying to condense it to where we're trying to give you the most in the shortest amount of time possible. But so now, just like everything else we do in the weight room, like you're working your way up from a clean, you start with making sure you hit the foundational movements to a high level full clean. Same thing on the change of direction. So we start super low level, and then it's like, how can we build speed? How can we build speed? How can we build intensity to where we really start working it to like we would transfer? So from here, okay, give me one movement we'd go from here.
So from here, I would go into a jog into a decel and then eventually a sprint into a decel. So now we're just going to start filling everything together. Big thing that we want to see is we start actually working into more of a jog or a sprint. So we start increasing that entry speed like we talked about at the beginning as far as our progressions. Okay, as we want to start being able to see that lowering of the center of mass on each step is going to be really big. So as we're talking about sprinting, we're going to talk about stride length increasing, ground contact time decreasing, and then our touchdown distance, which is the where our foot's landing underneath our hip, being really short. As we actually start working into a deceleration and a change of direction, those are all going to kind of flip. So we're going to start shortening our strides up. We want to start seeing that center of mass drop, and we're going to start seeing touchdown distance increase and stride length decrease. So what we're going to watch Max do right here is this is going to be a slow speed. So this is going to feel like almost forced, but we're going to go a 5-yard jog into a 5-yard decel. What I want you to feel is we're just slightly progressing speed over the course of 5 yards and then decelling over the course of 5 yards. You're not going to need 5 yards to decel, but right now I want you to take it. I want to focus on my last couple of steps. Every step I get that roll through the foot, and every step I'm lowering my center of mass to where on my last step at the decel at 10 yards, I feel exactly like we just did on that gallop decel.
Don't worry about landing exactly on the white line.
Yep. So we're coming out through our start. We're thinking about building that up. We're almost forcefully over 5 yards, feeling myself lower down into that. Goal is over the course of that 5 yards, I feel every step get slightly lower. Good. And then we'll walk it back. Nice. So as we're going through this next one more time, I want to almost feel more steps towards the end there. I don't want to try to lunge and stop on a dime yet. I want to start feeling myself use a couple steps to lower those hips. Think 3 to 4 steps, each step rolling through that foot, getting that hip lower. So a couple more steps now. Pop, pop, pop. Better. Yep. Yep. Good. From there, all we would do is increase our entry speed. So now what I want to see, I'm still going to go 5 yards, and I'm still going to take 5 yards on my decel, but now I want you to sprint. Okay, so now I want you to try to increase your speed as aggressive as we can through 5 yards, feel our acceleration, and then we're going to take over that last course of 5 yards. I still want to feel you take that 5 yards for the full decel. So our same focus, steps are getting shorter and faster, hips are lowering with each step, rolling through that foot. Good.
Job.
So now we start seeing the athlete's ability to increase stride length and feel that foot pushing back behind the hip, more of that ball of the foot contact. Now we start looking at where is their first decel step. So where do they actually start transitioning from a push and a sprint into a heel first out in front, where we start seeing that decel. So now what we can kind of start doing as a coaching staff is looking at where they start that decel and then how long it takes them to get into that decel. That's going to be a really good factor for in the future when we start looking at their change of direction ability. Maybe they have one side that they can really go 3 good, smooth, solid steps, boom, 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 in decel. And later on down the line, we see that this other side is taking them a really long time to work into that decel, or we'll start kind of exposing some of those imbalances that we see when we use the force plates or other things to check some of their like strength capabilities.
Rhythm is something we talk about in sprinting all the time. I think it's even more important in change of direction. So my favorite thing about these progressions is seeing the rhythm of his center of mass. So you'll see like at the beginning, he comes up really high, comes back down. Perfect. So it's like the middle is like a rooftop here. The last one, he comes up a little bit higher, and then because he's sprinting fast, he keeps this angle, and then he decels here. Eventually in sport, you got to be running vertically, and then how quick can you change direction? So here we can really work that rhythm to where you can start controlling that center of mass and how it progresses vertically with the horizontal change of direction there as well. So it's like, this is one where you can find that rhythm to where you can see some athletes where they look super quick and coordinated out of the bottom. A lot of times it's because of where their posture's at. And this, as you build the intensity, really helps build that.
From there, we'll work into some shuffle progressions, so just seeing how they get in and out of a little more of a lateral frontal plane position. When we go through this one, there's a couple different progressions we'll do, and then eventually we'll blend the sprint decel into that one. Starting off normally, we'll kind of work on some weight transfer and foot position stuff. Obviously, we've had Max for a little bit, so we're going to skip the really like static basic stuff with that one and just kind of go into the shuffle progression. We're just going to go into our 5-yard shuffle stick. Okay, what we want to see on this one is we're going to start in kind of our basic like starting position, good athletic position. What I really want to see on this one is roll through the lead foot, and then we're looking for a weight transfer as we get to that line. So as we're actually going to go stick a cut, what I'm going to look for is my weight kind of rolling through that outside foot, and then I'm going to see a weight transfer, an almost slide in place of this outside foot, where we start getting into those positions we talked about earlier, where I'm on the edges of the feet, my shin angles and body angle are starting to lean back the direction I'm trying to go. This is a really, really big one that we'll look for a ton as we move forward, where we'll see really bad positions where people are overreached. We'll see a lot of like uneven shin angles, and we'll start seeing some things with the center of mass up top that'll lead to one, like injury and issues, and then two, again, inefficient or slow cuts. So we're going to have Max jump in. Starting off, we're just going to go nice and easy. Don't care about your speed at all here, Max. I want nice and smooth, focusing on rolling through that lead leg. And then, yep, as we get to 5, we'll stick it. Feel that weight transfer. I want you to feel edges of the feet, shin angles, all that weight leans back towards the cut.
Love it. So even right here, don't move, Max. So you'll see this shin pretty vertical here. So his hips are this way while his shoulders are here. This is kind of what he looks like. I'm over exaggerating it. We want everything to work together. Shoulders with me a little bit here to where that shin and this shin are as close to parallel as we possibly can. That's what we're looking for. Relax, Max. But a lot of our athletes, they get like this, to where this shin is straight up and down. Okay, and this one's here. Again, this is where we can get hurt here, or you're just really inefficient. You're going to be slow and unathletic out of that cut. It's tough to do when we stick. Sorry, Wyatt.
Sometimes it's difficult to do, especially as we're going at a lower speed as well. Because if you do typically get into the positions that we actually want to see on a full speed cut, you will actually fall out of that. Because we'll get so deep into that shin angle, so deep into that foot that we will actually fall out of that. So as we're going at a slow speed or sticking, there's a little bit of leniency that we understand is going to come with that. We're going to look for those to be fixed as we increase our speed as well. But all the good points that we do want to see and start focusing on at a slower direction. So now we're just going to come back the other way. Again, as we're going into that, making sure that we're not jumping into that cut. We're feeling that just smooth slide. I should be staying low and again, feeling compliance as we go into
hip and shoulder shouldn't change planes.
Nice and smooth. Slide into that.
Money.
Good. So now we even see better shin angles here. We're feeling a little bit more of the edges of the feet. You can tell Max has some weight to the balls of his feet. He's ready to get out of that cut. Awesome. From here, again, we'll work into a little bit more of a crossover step in a slow position as well. A lot of the times we'll start in a static position. For sake of time, again, we're just going to have Max go right into it. So now we're just going to go a jog into that decel position. So now what we're going to see is an actual crossover step. We're going to start seeing more of the strength capabilities and like ranges of motion that ankle can go through as we get into a cut. So now we're just going to go a nice easy 5-yard jog. We're going to look for a 2-step transition. So basically as we get to this line, we're going to start seeing a little bit of that lowering of the center of mass that we just saw on the decel. And now we're going to see a transition step where we actually get weight to that inside leg already, the edge of that foot. And then we are able to bring everything around in that same shuffle position we just got into. Obviously, just a little bit of a different strategy to get into it as we go through a run. So nice and easy here, Max. We're going to go our first rep. You're going to turn towards the right. So as we're getting towards that line, again, I don't care about you being perfect at 5 yards. I want you to feel that right foot, kind of that T-step action. All my weight leaned back towards the clock.
Good. I love it. One thing that I see here, Max, walk it back. When athletes are doing it, I see coaches doing it, it's like tough to get them in the position. So like easy cue for me is like, what are your last 2 steps? So for like, if I'm training an entire team and we're turning this way, my head is like, okay, I'm going to go right, left every single time. I'm going to finish like how we are right there, but I'm going to go right, left. What I'm looking for is what's their touchdown distance on that step before they get into the T position. Like, are they way too far out in front? Or are they way too much right here? If you're too much underneath your hips on that first one, you're trying to decel. When you get to here, all your weight's going to shift this way, which we don't want, because if I get to this line and I decelerate here, it's going to take me a lot of time to be able to stop myself, reaccelerate, and come back out. So it's got to be that right position when I'm out in front of me. So that's, for me as a cue, I'm thinking about what are my last 2 steps, either right, left, or left, right. Usually helps him nail it. But then what I'm looking for is what are the 2 steps into that cut looking like? And then when they get there, what do they look like when they hold it? Are they getting here, shifting like this, going to here? Is their weight out? Are their toes all in different positions like that? So that's what we're looking for here. So Max, let's go a lot faster into it. Okay. Again, I don't care where you stop on that white line. I just want you thinking about right, left. Okay. I want you going as fast as you can. Even if we break you a little bit, if you fall that way, that's all right. Stick it. See where you're at. Right, left, last 2 steps. Good. Now he actually killed that. And again, you watched, he's always been a toe drag guy, which I've been trying to get rid of, but he does a great job. But if you watched his step, because he knew he was going really, really fast, before he went to the cut, he had to get that foot out in front of his center of mass, but when he did it, everything was still stacked. Where we see sometimes where it's like, I'm in this position, or as he puts his foot here, we get in these positions. Max is making it look real easy, but that's what you're looking for as they get into the entry of those cuts. Great job, Max.
Another thing you're actually seeing Max do a great job of, that we see most of our athletes actually mess up, is as we're getting into that cut, he's doing a great job keeping his weight inside right here. It's really hard as we just stick and don't sprint out of it, where all of his weight stays here, and he's getting this back hip and foot all the way around like he's prepping to sprint. So as he's coming around into that cut, we see almost the toes even or even cheated a little bit, where that outside foot starts coming slightly forward. What we'll see a ton on this is people feel like they get a really good sit into this, but we end up here. Big staggered stance. Now as we actually go to make a 180-degree cut, I'm going to be in trouble, because I'm either going to have to false step out of this, or I'm going to have to step this foot all the way around. I'm going to end up curving that sprint. Anything we're doing in deceleration or change of direction is we're trying to set ourselves up in the best position to reaccelerate. So if he's in a bad position there, the like quality of him getting into that cut doesn't matter as much, because he's not going to be able to reaccelerate out of it. So setting up into good positions to be able to reaccelerate.
Again, Max is a tough example because he's so good at it. But like we talked about in the video with Travis, with our injured athlete, we're trying to push their limit. I want to get fast enough to where they look like that. Because in sport, you're never going to land completely perfect. So with a guy like Max, we'd be able to progress through everything that we did really fast. But then something that I can add, there's a bunch of ways we can do it. But one simple one, okay, so where now he's just going to react to me, okay? I'm going to let him know on this one which way he's going to turn. But eventually you can react to where he doesn't know where he's going to stop and he doesn't know which direction we're going to go. But for this, Max, I'm going to have you sprint at me as fast as you can. Okay, when I tell you to stop, okay, you're going to stop facing the nets here. So you're still thinking right, left. So this would be a progression where we start introducing some chaos. Okay, but he's going to go full speed. My goal is to kind of break him. Okay, so Max, you're thinking about as fast as you can. A lot of our athletes will guess before we get in the cut. Makes it too easy. Don't guess. We're trying to get better at it. And again, this is something that you have to wait. I see people skip right to this, to where then they're just shitty cuts all the time. That's where it's like, that's what we always try to focus on is movement quality. We saw Max right there kill it. So it's like, okay, we're going to nail a few reps right there. Now we're going to push him a little bit. Okay, Max, you're here. Max out full speed. I'll tell you when to stop. Ready? Go. Stop. Good. So even there, took a few steps to get into it, but still did perfect. Max, I want you to do it again. Okay. How quick can you get in that position? Okay. How quick can you get into that position? Let's go again. Faster. Ready? Go. Stop. Good. Yeah. See how we broke him? So that's a guy, again, if you're in the off season, if you're at a time where you can really push intensity, that's how you can start pushing these drills to where, okay, now we're starting to get some transfer. You can start doing it to where I'm going to tell him to stop which direction. We can get it to where he's going to start bouncing back out, where we're actually working on the exit of the cut. That's how these foundational movements, if you nail them right, how we would progress them as we keep going.
The reactive stuff is awesome. Again, that's one of our progressions. So again, entry speed, angle of the cut, and then adding reaction or agility. So before we go into the reactive stuff, we're just going to kind of see how Max gets in and out of cuts. So right now we're going to go back into that original shuffle drill we did. Okay, now we're just going to go a shuffle. So we're going to go through 5 yards right here. Now we're going to go down and back. Now what we're going to look for is the exact same positions that we just talked about. We're trying to feel like edge of the feet, shin angle. Now we're really going to be able to feel that compliance and a little bit of what we like, the projection on the way out. So when we talk about acceleration, we always talk about projection. Okay, we're going to see a little bit of that coming out. This is a more basic one that we won't see too aggressively yet, but then we'll progress it moving on. So this one, we're just going to go nice and easy 5 yards. All I want you to feel now as we hit that 5 yard line, I'm going to try to feel those same edges of the feet, shin angles, but now I'm going to try to feel myself sit and push back out. So I want to feel that little bit of compliance, and I want to feel myself be able to pop back out of that. Cool, nice and easy 5 yards. We'll stick it back where we're at right now. Load and go. Good. So we're going to go again. Okay, I want you to, again, kind of stay a little bit lower and smoother on that shuffle in so we're not like jumping and floating so much. I want you to really try to pop out of that cut. So as I'm getting into there, I'm going to load into those hips. I'm going to think explode, project. Like we're going to go hit that 2-point sprint you just hit. I want to feel myself actually drive up out of that, right? Nice and easy in. Load and go. Good. So we're going to start looking for some compliance into that cut, those angles, body positions, and everything we talked about. Now we're going to see how they can actually load and get back out of that. That should be a pretty quick process, but it should be explosive. They should be able to gain ground. One of the big things that we'll see with athletes is this like stiff bounce out of this where I'm actually not loading up at all. It's more of a pop. And then I don't gain any ground out of that cut, where it's almost like I'm just staying in place out of that. We want to start teaching them how to load into that hip, knee, and ankle and use that to re-accelerate back out. So now we'll go the same thing. Okay. Normally we'd go kind of our run into a shuffle. For now, we're just going to go Max straight into a sprint. Okay. With this, we're going to start with our entry speed at about 50%. So I don't need you to see you sprint into this one. Yeah. I want to work on getting into the same efficient cut that we just worked on with that crossover step, and then being able to accelerate out of it. So as we're coming out of that, I want to feel that same thing where we're loading and getting into good positions. Now I want to see you project and switch out, right? Hip thigh forward, be able to punch out of that cut as aggressive as we can. Okay, 50% on the way in, 100% on the way out, projecting and switching. We're just going to go through 5. Just going through 5. Nice and easy in. Step, get out. Good. Nice.
Good cut. Not good turf.
Awesome. We're going to go again there. Same thing in. I just want you to increase that entry speed a little bit now. So now we're coming in a little bit hotter. Make sure we're getting into those feet, sitting into the hips. Really try to feel yourself project out. How much ground can you gain off of this line as we come out? Good. So now as we start increasing speed, you'll even see right there, overall really good. Max is a good athlete. But as we got into that one, we started seeing a little bit of that stagger. So now coming out, he had to kind of rotate, fall, and catch out, where we want to start feeling him be able to really get in to that position to be able to project and push out of that. So we're going to go one more time. I almost want you to overthink this one a little bit. We're going to like cheat the feet. Yeah. So as we get into that cut, still sitting into that hip, we're doing a great job there, but make sure we set ourselves up, almost cheat that a little bit to get into that acceleration on the way out.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great job.
And now, when we make this cut, the biggest thing for me, like he was talking about, is projection. Sometimes you might take a false step. That's fine, but make sure your center of gravity and your hips are going forward. Again, if you're in sport, you're a DB, you're a receiver, you're reacting to something off of a soccer play, whatever it is, even if you take one false step, but how quick can you get your hip and your thigh to start projecting forward? That's where you're going to win. I always think about like trying to be hip to hip with a guy. If I'm here, okay, whatever it takes to get my hip out in front of him to where I'm trying to get that projection and gain as much ground as fast as I can, especially compared to my defender or whoever's in front of me. Great job, Max.
Awesome. Again, this is a bit of a fast progression. A lot of the times we'll work through some more narrow cuts like 45, 90 degrees and stuff before we go directly into the 180. But just for sake of going over some of the drills and showing you guys how a lot of this stuff looks, progressing a little fast. With this, once we think there's like a good base and he has some good technical skills in this and we've taught through those progressions, we'll actually start moving into a little bit more of our assessment. The assessment we like to use off the bat is the 505 test. We use a modified 505. So basically we'll have them go a 10-yard sprint into a 505 cut. So what that means is the lasers are going to be set out at 10 yards. We'll see how fast they get into that 10-yard sprint. Then they have an extra 5 yards to make a cut and get back through the lasers just to test their ability to cut. We'll set this one up and show you. As a baseline to start, we're going to get their just 10-yard sprint speed. So one of the big things when we're actually assessing change of direction is making sure that they are coming in at least 90% of their max speed. So an easy way to kind of have like a good change of direction score on paper, but actually have bad change of direction capabilities is, say we don't test that 10-yard time and they're only running at about 70% of their speed. The cut looks really good. The cut looks really fast, but realistically, they're not actually having a high entry speed. So as we set this one up,
which you won't do in a game.
Yep. Yeah. So as we set this one up, before we actually get into the 505, we would have Max test his 10-yard sprint time. And then basically from there, as we go through the 505, in order for any of these tests to count, the 10-yard sprint time needs to be within 90% of his top score on that before we actually get into the cuts. So as we get started here, we'd have Max test his 10-yard sprint time. So our starting line would obviously be back at this white line we've been starting on all day. Have him sprint through 10 yards. We'd typically do anywhere from like 3 to 5 trials here and either take an average or best time and have him try to sit within 10% of that as we actually go into our cuts. So the cuts are going to look the exact same. Honestly, as we're doing assessments, I won't really give a whole lot of cues just because I don't want them thinking. It's going to slow things down. So basically, we're going to use all the technical skills that we just worked on throughout the session and just let him rip these ones. What we'll typically do on the 505 test is we'll go 2 to 3 tests each direction. So we'll have him sprint through or to the 15-yard line here and then sprint back through those lasers. So what this one will do is, again, test how long it takes him to get from the 10-yard line to the 15 and make that cut back through the 10-yard line. The reason we have this 10-yard entry is just to make sure he's actually building up into a high speed to actually challenge that cut. So he's not just cutting at a low speed and making this one look easy. So as we go through this test, I would have Max go, and we're going to go, Max, we're going to go turning to the left first. So your goal is touching your right foot to the 15-yard line and getting back through the lasers as fast as we can.
Good job.
Great job.
And this is one where you can build this inside of your training and you're going to get more strength get more transferable, really, capabilities from perfecting these cuts and pushing the intensities on these cuts than anything we can do in the weight room. And we're huge weight room guys. Like, we love the weight room, but you're going to get way more out of it than any single leg ISO, anything. Those are all going to help make this a little bit more efficient. Okay. But without actually doing these types of cuts, doing a 180-degree cut is one of the hardest cuts that you can do. That's non-reactive. And building this into your training is to where we can really start building some capacity, some strength in the lower half to be able to make these cuts transfer to sport.
Max, we'll just go one more, facing the other way, and then we'll kind of talk about how we'd break down and assess this. Awesome. So right off the bat with this test, Max did an awesome job. What we would typically do is we would actually sit back and kind of film the actual cut portion of this. So number one, as he crosses the lasers, is within 10% of his actual 10-yard sprint time. If he's not, the test doesn't count. He's coming in too slow, but that will also tell us something. If he's not willing to come in at the same speed, especially if he's cutting to a specific side, it tells us that, there's either a weakness or a hesitation or something on that side that he doesn't want to get into that cut with. Now, obviously, there's not going to be every test is perfect, so there may be a couple tests where he comes in a little bit slower and then fixes it later on. But that can be a first telltale sign. Next thing we're going to look at is we're going to start looking at the penultimate and penultimate step. So we're going to really start seeing how comfortable they are loading into those decel steps. So a lot of what we talked about today is that actual transfer step. All the work in deceleration gets done before that step. So we'll start seeing as they're going into that cut, when we start getting that heel into the ground and lowering that center of mass, that's where 90% of the work is being done. That's where all the force is being applied. So what we're going to really look for is that touchdown distance out in front of the hip and how they're actually loading and lowering the center of mass. For example, a lot of the times when we work with like our ACL athletes or knee injury athletes, what we'll start seeing is on the healthy side, they're really comfortable getting that foot out in front, putting on a high braking force and loading into the hip. As they go through the injured side or the uncomfortable side, they'll start shortening that touchdown distance and almost getting a quick pop off the ground and getting right back into that next foot. So the healthy leg is the one doing all the work. So oddly enough, if it's like a left leg injury, a lot of the time we'll actually see them more comfortable cutting to the left side because that right leg is doing most of the work on the deceleration. So we're going to start number one, looking at kind of technically how they're getting into that cut and what that looks like. And then we'll actually look at the speed. So say Max ran a 1.01 on one side and ran a 1.51 on the other side. There's clearly a big discrepancy. So there's something going on there. Now it's our job to break down whether it's a strength or a physical quality that's limiting him from being into that cut, or if it's something technical and he just is uncomfortable cutting to that side. This is a really good test that forces you to cut at a high speed at one of our most aggressive cuts, and it's going to start exposing a lot of issues, either strength or technical, that we can start breaking down and working on over time.
I love it. And then the best part about the 505 for me, again, is like what he just said, is like you can get up to a game speed and we can really see where it's at. When we do a pro agility or a 5-10-5, we like those because we know a lot of college coaches look at those. But this, we've kind of changed into our assessment model because we can really see their inefficiencies. And when you're with a team or you're doing this with a large group, it's tough to really break that down. But if you nail the positions that we do at the beginning and all those foundational movements, and then you build this intensity slow. Like you can even do this within 5 yards without the 10-yard build. Then you can do 10-yard build and just coming right back out. And then eventually where you get to the 15 yards, if you progress it right, even with an entire team, you can get some really, really big wins there. And you can see if you get a whole team to go, you can see there's like 3 people that are bouncing behind, maybe even one that you think is one of your best players. And then you can really start noticing, okay, something's going on with Wyatt today, or something's going on with that athlete today. And this is a really great drill to coach with a lot of athletes and to get a lot of transfer and to be able to see a lot of things that are going on, either positive or negatively. Great job, Max. Wyatt, awesome. So change of direction is something that we battle with all the time. We love it, but we notice it's like, are these drills actually helping? Or, is this speed ladder where somebody's doing this actually making us better? Or some crazy box jump or depth drop, is it actually making us better? Now, there are some things that do make us better, and some of our really young athletes, does it help with coordination? Heck yeah. Sure. But with somebody at a high level, and we're trying to actually increase their performance on the field, we're trying to get them quicker out of a cut, get them to be able to react, try to mitigate as much risk as we possibly can. I know that word's overused, but we are still trying to do that. This progression is what we use. From here, it would be reactive. From here, it would be like, so when we say reactive, it's like they're on us. We know that, hey, they're gonna switch on our go, on our signal, or on a color, or on a go. But then we try to get from there, we try to get into some chaotic movements where he's responding to me, to where he has to look at other things. We throw a ball into the equation. We throw a defender into the equation, because we know anything that we're going to do in our training, it's not going to match the same intensity as the game. Even if we can go at the same speeds, there's something with the nervous system to where it's like there's no pressure. It's not the same as being in a game, right? And we know that. Training, we're trying to match that and maybe push some volume above what we would do in a game, but we know that intensity is not going to be the same in here. We're trying to get to that as close as we possibly can with our change of direction. But again, with our athletes, or anybody that's working with young athletes, or if you are a young athlete, you're practicing 5, 6, 7 days a week. These beginning movements, what we wanted to show you, even though they might look boring, they might look elementary, we have some really high level people that we have a pro basketball player coming in right now. She has Achilles issues. Sometimes she gets into these cuts. We can see that she's struggling here. If we can help with these cuts, one, we can get rid of the Achilles. Two, her performance is going to increase. We have some young kids who think that they're better than this and we're just going to go play sevens all the time. It's like, man, we're missing the boat. If we can get in these foundational movements, we can get some huge wins in the sport. So that's why we wanted to make a video on it and kind of show you our philosophy on how we work through change direction. And there's nobody better than does it than Wyatt. And Max, appreciate it, dog. Absolutely. Thank you, guys.